I kind of think of my biggest accomplishment as surviving, making it this far along the road and the journey, and it's been, one of the greatest joys of my life. My family aside, it's been that rewarding. So, feel very lucky and fortunate, and to have songs along the way that reach as many people as they've reached. That's also really rewarding, and that's something that really gives me the biggest feeling of I guess fulfillment in a way, is to know that things that I was feeling and meant a lot to me actually got out there to many people across the world, and hopefully, knock on wood, maybe made a little bit of a difference in their lives. Or maybe there's some things that they remember back on as being part of their lives. It took me years kind of just to get to the starting gate. It just took like 12 years at least before I was actually getting any traction with my songs. And just kept at it, and probably should have dropped out many times along the way, but I was too stubborn and too dumb to do so. So I just kept going.
I've been there.
Well, I really wanted to be a professional hockey player.
Okay.
It's very similar worlds we're in. A lot of cross-checking. Slap shots in different ways. But no, music was always in my blood, and actually the minute I knew what I wanted to do with my life in terms of being a songwriter was when I was 12 years old and I was in the Ed Sullivan Theater watching the Beatles in the theater live when they came to America. So I saw them live.
Can I touch you?
So when they walked on stage, I just pointed and said, that's what I want to do. So through my teen years, I wrote songs. It was an emotional outlet. It was a way to express things that I wouldn't ordinarily. But I kind of started thinking maybe I had a knack for it. I could do it. So I started taking my songs into New York and going to the legendary 1650 building and Brill building, and making connections with publishers along the way, and started realizing this was my passion. This is what I really want to do. It took a couple of summers off between years, sophomore year and junior year at college, and went for it and got actually a record deal with Warner Brothers Music during the singer-songwriter era of Randy Newman, Jackson Browne, James Taylor, Neil Young, and the sort. That's what I did. I was a singer-songwriter, made a record, and the record came out and sank without bubbles, as a friend of mine once described that. But I was hooked, and I became a staff writer. Long story short, I went through a lot of fits and starts, a lot of tumbles and stumbles, and then about early 80s kind of found my footing with drum machines and synthesizers, where I could program myself. I could immediately direct all my creativity into a place where there was an instant response and an instant arrangement that came from me with nothing filtered. Then I started getting records recorded of my songs, and I, knock on wood, I started to have some hits. I had a record out with Bette Midler, then I had a big hit with Jermaine Jackson, did a lot of records with the Pointer Sisters, and Jeffrey Osborne, the Woo Woo song, Michael Bolton, Soul Provider, and Love is a Wonderful Thing, Patti LaBelle, Oh People, Jennifer Page, Crush, and various people like that along the way, and Kenny G, duet with him and Peebo Bryson was a big hit, and Carly Simon, that was a real fun one. I did about 12 tracks with them. That was really working side by side with Richard Perry, their producer. So, once they did one song of mine, which I played for Richard and he liked, that kind of led to one after another. So that became almost like a steady job for a few years. It wasn't about the pitching as much as just continuing the creative flow, and you would hear a song, you say, let's do it, hear another song, let's do it. And then I found myself wanting to produce these records, and not just be an associate producer, but actually, be at the helm of that job, and that's what I started to do. Writing with Michael Bolton was an example where he and I started writing Soul Provider originally for James Ingram. And when he finished it, with someone you know very well, Michael was friends with James. He said, I think I want to do this myself. So we wrote the song pretty quickly. I had started it, and he came on board. But we had one line at the end that we just couldn't finish. It was a lyrical line, which literally took a year to finish, just the one line. And when it was done, it was a big sigh of relief. So that led to him and I writing Love is a Wonderful Thing, and it was kind of much the same experience. And but these are things where you're not necessarily out there pitching. You're working with the artist who's already making the record, so you don't, the pitch is internal and it's taken care of as long as they like the record. Well, I found her singing in a bar, and I signed her to my production company and worked with her and helped her develop along as a singer. And she's just a great singer. She's always had a magnificent, wonderful voice that I've always loved. And we worked together for a good couple of years, and we put out a single on my label, which was a remake of Chain of Fools, and it did very well locally in Northern California. Kind of caught a couple people's ears, and got a couple phone calls, who's that, from some labels, and that led to a label deal with an international, a German company called Adel, and they were just setting up shop here. So we continued with Adel. My deal with Adel was to finish the record, and we would put it out together. And we were really kind of one song shy at the end, and we had a couple we liked, but we were that song shy. So Mark Muller and I wrote Crush to a track by Cosgrove and Clark, and we kind of like finished it, and I went in and I made the record, and then Mark and I went back and we wrote the bridge, and then changed pretty much the feel of it along the way, and it became more of a guitar kind of pop song. Jennifer sang it brilliantly. She just knew exactly what to do, and she made it all come alive. But the story with that, to me, is most fun really, is not as much what happened creatively with that, because although I will say, when it was done, nobody liked it. The label didn't like it. This is never coming out, forget about it. It's just, the head of the label was just really spirited in his defense of his own opinion. So I took a chance, actually, through Diane Warren, who's a friend, and she set me up with the people at Kiss FM, because I had the feeling this would never come out as a single. And yet I wanted to force the issue because I believed in it that much. So I went up to Kiss FM through her introduction and met the music director, Tracy Austin, and played her the song. And she just started beaming. She said, I've been looking for a record like this for the last 3 months. She played it for the program director, Dan Kiley, and they added it. And it was just this little old independent record. I'm fighting against all the majors, and they added it. It took off. They put it through their chain of radio stations, which at the time before it was iHeart was called the J-Core chain. And it took off and it became a big hit worldwide. What I've been doing for the past, I'd say 5-10 years is developing artists and putting them out on my own label and going out to radio and, being really kind of chief cook and bottle washer, not just producing and writing, but also, doing the marketing and promotion. And I have an artist right now actually in the contemporary jazz world. His name is John Novello. He's a great keyboard artist. We did an album and put it out there, and the first 3 singles, the first 2 are top 5, and the second one just went #1. Album was #6 in the contemporary jazz world, 2016. So that's been a lot of fun and musically very gratifying. Not something I normally ever would have seen myself doing. I'm just not sure that jazz was something. But the musicianship makes it all worthwhile, and he's so good and great to work with that it's just been very pleasurable. And I'm working on another pop project. I will not reveal the name yet because it's not ready to, but the music is well on its way, and that's an exciting one too. So I love doing that. I like actually, it's not just creating the music and the words and the music and the production, but it's going out into the world with it and having a little bit of control over who gets to hear it and in what form and what it looks like and sounds like. I honestly think it's tougher than ever. And I know every generation says it's tougher than ever, but now I really do feel that. It's because music sales are half of what they used to be. Because of streaming and downloading, there isn't quite the reservoir of money out there that there was. So number one, make sure that you have to do it, that you can't live without it, that there's no other choice but to go for it. And, realize that you can get your music out there way more easily than you could into the marketplace. Through iTunes and CD Baby, you can, with just one click of the computer, you can put your song up to be available in the marketplace. Learn a little bit about it. You don't have to become, a CEO. You don't have to have a business degree from Wharton, but know a little bit about, be aware of what goes into that and where your options are and where you're going to get the return on what you do, because it's so much harder to find that return. And I also still really believe that the great songs with not just the great beats, but the great music and the words are what really make it. I think there's a reason why songs like Uptown Funk were so big. You hear it instantly, everybody agrees. It's just that much better. So think of it that way. Think that what you do can't just be something you get excited about with your friends and you pat each other in the back, but really take a step back and say, well, did I measure up to a record like that? Put yourself against that. Don't put yourself against things that maybe are even hits, but not as good.
Amanda asks, I heard Soul Provider, I just heard it on qWaqqchat. Was Soul Provider written as a reggae song?
No, I did a version of that as a reggae song for a Japanese album I had out, with me as the artist. Decided just to go for that feel for it, and did.
So you didn't. So you did a new version of it after the fact.
I did it with me as the artist. qWaqqchat is wonderful because it's a great community. It's a great place to find out about other songwriters, and finding out about them in terms of what they've written as hits is one thing, but finding out about them in terms of what they've done that aren't hits and what helped them become hit songwriters is really valuable, and it's really important. And the thing about qWaqqchat is obviously you don't have to have written hits to be on there, but it's a great place to go and see new songwriters, see old songwriters, and I don't think there's any place like it for songwriters, and we need it more than ever. Something that's very, very, very necessary.